How about now? Apparently I was locked into my headpiece. So I just rambled for 4 minutes and you couldn't hear me. Nothing. All good? Hear me now? Lip readers? Got me? Yes. Wow. Hot start. Hot start here today on a Friday. Where's the bats? Where's my guy George? What do we got here? That's not bats. That's a promo code that you want. Here's the bats. Kyle Pitts. Next week, we're going to get into a lot of the coaching changes as well. I can't believe I just rambled for 4 minutes. I saw the comments coming and it's like, wow, man, everybody's excited. We got some questions, but nobody could hear me. So I am going to basically start this show over. Welcome in, Mean Streets. Happy Friday, FTN Network. Smash the like button. Any comments, any questions, leave them there in the comment section, address them on the show. Always circling back on these videos as well. iTunes, Spotify. You guys know the drill. You guys are friends of the show, and I really appreciate the support. You're smashing like buttons, rate, review, subscribe. Again, any questions that you guys have, you can leave them there. You always circle back on these videos. You can leave them in the comment section. I know some people have reached out to me, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com, with some one and done strategy stuff and all that stuff. You can always at any moment ask me. So I'm going to ride solo here with you today. Going to give my thoughts on the Super Bowl 58. We have Chiefs and we have the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to dive into all that. We're going to take a look at the prop board, take a look at basically everything that books have to offer, from passing yards and rushing yards and receiving yards and receptions and touchdowns, anytime touchdowns, MVP stuff. Going to give you my thoughts, my board in terms of picks. We're going to really dive into this matchup, of course, with some storyline stuff. We are going to talk about Travis Kelce. We are going to talk about Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and the Dynasty talk. We're going to give some love to KC. They deserve it. Whether you're sick of them or not, or you think that the Super Bowl is rigged, and all that nonsense, we're going to give the flowers of these players that they deserve giving love to, right? CMC and Purdy going to be on this list as well. And really just taken back by the no sound. I appreciate you guys saying it's like, wow, there's a lot of people early and then they just bounced. No wonder, because they couldn't hear me. And then we will talk one and done. Jameson Williams, if you had him last week, good for you. It was back and forth between him and Josh Reynolds. Reynolds had the drops. JMO had not one but two touchdowns. So that's a huge difference maker to have a guy like JMO put up the showing that he did added to your one and done lineup is great. So we will talk about the final edition of the one and done lineup. And as I was saying up at the top, riding solo here with me today, but next week got some guests lined up with some fresh takes. You just don't want to listen to me. You want some fresh takes, different ideas, different props, and reasoning behind some of the props and the picks from some other people outside of FTN. So look for that next week. We're going to have a lot of shows and a lot of segments for you guys next week. And the football is not going to stop. I know that the Super Bowl next week, but we're going to talk top free agents. We're going to talk draft. We're going to talk mock draft. We're going to talk all kinds of stuff here on Mean Streets, and going to continue the NHL and the NBA stuff, covering all the sports and the golf. So you guys are here. It's okay. It's Friday. Bats, welcome in. Steven says, any good lip readers in the comments is just hilarious. Good stuff. Smokey the Cat, we tried. Can't hear you. No sound. What's going on? All right. JMO 2 touchdowns. All right. Enough. Okay. Oh man, you guys are awesome. All right, Super Bowl 58, Chiefs and 49ers. Not gonna lie, I thought the Niners would get here. The way that they got here hasn't been, I guess if you're a Niners fan, it's been a little bit uneasy. Of course, you know how they've gotten here. They had to come from behind in the second half, which is something Shanahan and the Niners haven't been able to do. They came from behind against the Packers, and we made some excuses about Brock Purdy and the sloppy weather and no Debo and maybe some picks that Green Bay should have had. Nonetheless, they won that game. And then last week, Detroit, I thought Detroit let one slip as well as the another comeback from San Francisco. But not surprised that the Niners are to this point, but they did struggle big time. Defensively, they gave up some big plays. They've struggled on the ground. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, I did not think that they would get here. I thought that they would slip up against the Ravens. We did have Kansas City +4 last week. I mean, we're not going to pat ourselves on the back for that. We'd like to get the team right. We were perfect on the spreads last week with the dogs, but we did not get Kansas City winning that football game. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to their defense here on this show and what they have done. So just hang on a little bit. We're going to have happy Friday. Welcome in. It's okay. It's a Friday. Welcome in, Lou. And we will again, we're going to give some props in the show. We're going to take a look at the prop board. We're going to save some of the novelty stuff for next week. We're not going to dive too much into that this week, but I wanted to really just dive into the matchup and get to know these teams and some of the statistics defensively and offensively, and maybe where we can target some of these props and come up with a winner here. So again, this is a rematch. I said this off the top of the show. You did not hear me. Super Bowl 54 rematch. It was a 31-20 win from Kansas City. It would come from behind win. They scored 21 points, Kansas City, in the fourth quarter of that game. A lot has changed. Some of the same personnel and head coaches, of course, but no CMC and no Ayuk and Purdy versus Jimmy G. Say what you want about those guys being quarterback managers, but certainly an upgrade with Purdy under center. And you could see it last week, what he can do. He's kind of sneaky on the ground with his legs. Not something that you expect from Brock Purdy. But it was a difference maker in that game last week against the Lions for sure. Damian Williams had a big game. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, big games across the board there. It was the start, just scratching the surface here of a dynasty, especially if Kansas City finds a way to win this game in Las Vegas, Super Bowl 58. We can chop it up as a dynasty for sure. And I'm going to talk and compare some of the other dynasty squads. And I'm going to get into Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes versus Brady. We're going to talk about some of those things, but let's just dive into the game and the odds as of right now. Things may change a little bit. I don't think they're going to change too much between these two teams. We saw 2.5 opened up early, San Fran. It was bet hard on the Kansas City side. It got to 1. I've seen 1.5, 2 across the board. Again, our prop shop, you get the best possible odds. There's a 2.5 out there. It's over at FanDuel minus 2.5. So you can get Kansas City at plus 2.5. The total has kind of stayed true. It's at 47.5. You look across, most books have 47.5. There's 147 out there. If you are backing Kansas City on the money line, plus 110, and San Francisco at minus 120. Let's get to know these two teams, though, and let's start offensively with both squads. Actually, we'll start defensively because I think that's, a lot of people, when they look at these teams, they see Kansas City and San Francisco, they, oh, man, shootout. It's going to be, 60-plus points. KC and Philly last year, a ton of points. I have a lean to the under. I think this is going to be like a 23-20 type football game. I think both defenses, they definitely have some players on both sides, terrific coaching on both sides, especially Spags, and we're going to give him a little bit of love. But offensively, these two teams can certainly score. But defensively, they both allowed 17 points, 17.3, the slight edge for Kansas City, the second best mark in football, in San Francisco, the third best mark in football. Both top 10 in terms of yards allowed. Defensively, Kansas City number 2, just 289, and San Fran just slightly over 300. Passing yards allowed, middle of the pack for San Francisco, 214. KC, top 5, number 4, 176 passing yards allowed. Didn't give up anything to Tua. Didn't give up anything to Patrick or to Lamar Jackson last week. How about yards allowed per attempt? Both of these teams, top 5. Kansas City, the slight edge again, number 3 overall, allowing 6 yards per attempt in the regular season. Quarterback completion percentage against San Francisco, bottom 12 at 66%. How about KC? Top 10 at 61%, number 8 in the NFL. Both teams inside the top 10 in passing touchdowns allowed. San Francisco 20, KC 19. In sacks, Kansas City number 2 in the NFL, 57 sacks. But San Francisco top 10 with 48. So KC tops San Fran in all of those categories I just talked about. Some of them, they just edge them out. Others, certainly the big difference in Kansas City in terms of defense, and mostly pass defense. The Niners much better at stopping the run. Rushing yards allowed this season, 89 per game is what the 49ers allowed. That was the third best mark in football. KC inside the bottom half at 113 per game. Yards allowed per carry, just 4.1 for the Niners. It was a top 10 mark in Kansas City at 4.5, which was a bottom 8 mark. Rushing touchdowns allowed, both of them allowed 10 inside the top 10, inside the top 5, rather. So Kansas City, the edge in the passing categories, but San Francisco, the edge in the rushing categories. They hadn't allowed a running back to top 86 rushing yards against them in the regular season, but watching here in the playoffs, it hasn't been the same stout rush defense. We saw Aaron Jones pop off for over 100 rushing yards against them. We saw David Montgomery with 93 rushing yards on 15 carries. And the Lions really ran all over San Francisco in that game. They got away from it in the second half of the game, but they certainly ran. They had a lot of success running the football against them. Even Jahmyr Gibbs had 45 rushing yards. As a team, they had 182 rushing yards against the 49ers. We're going to talk about our guy, Isaiah Pacheco, in a little bit. We're going to give him a lot of love on this show, and we've been hammering his props, and I think he's going to be a big-time player in this game as well. So how do these two teams match up in terms of DVOA defense? Well, San Francisco's owned them, but it's been, some of the numbers are close. It's really about the rush defense where these two teams are different. Like Kansas City's been great in terms of pass defense, and I'm going to talk about their adjustments that they made in a minute. But total DVOA defense, San Fran 4, KC 7. Pass DVOA defense, San Fran 4, KC 5. So even though some of the numbers that I talked about suggest that Kansas City's had the better season, DVOA suggests a slight edge to the San Francisco 49ers, and definitely the edge in terms of rushing as well. Rush DVOA, San Fran, number 15, and Kansas City, number 27. So we get the edge there for the Niners. Leaning KC right now, Lou says +2. We're going to get into this stuff in a little bit. NHL skills comp, we're actually not going to dive into any of that stuff here today on the show, Troy. I haven't really dove into any of it. I'm not going to, it's a straight football show here today. But hang on, maybe we'll do something towards the end and take a look at it. We did have Cooch for the first pick at 4-1, but it's a crapshoot, man. Let's get back to the football game here. I want to talk about offensively where these two teams are very different, because Kansas City's offense has been pretty stale all year. I heard Rob Gronkowski's, this past week say that, you could flip a switch. I kind of get it. I don't think that happened this season, but I heard Gronk say, like, in and year out, they always knew they were going to make the Super Bowl. They were, winning divisions. They went through lulls, and it showed in their game. And when they got to the playoffs, they were able to flip the switch. And I think that a lot of people, myself included, counted out Kansas City to go on a run because their offense was just so awful this year. It was stale. There were so many penalties. Nobody was helping out Patrick Mahomes. They led the league in drops. Travis Kelce looked a little bit slower. Pacheco was in and out of the lineup. There was no stability on the ground game. The defense was always good, but the offense, excuse me, not so much. Again, points per game. San Francisco, number 3, 28.9. Kansas City, middle of the pack, 21. Not what we're used to seeing. Yards per game. KC, top 10, number 9 overall. They did move the ball, but San Francisco, number 2, nearly 400 yards per game. Passing, top 4 for San Francisco, 257. KC right there, just outside the top 5, but San Fran, certainly the edge. Yards per attempt. KC, 6.9, number 19 in the NFL. Number 1, you guessed it, San Francisco, a healthy 9.3. Brock Purdy's among a lot of the leading categories among quarterbacks. Yards per attempt, completion percentage, passing yards, touchdown interception ratio. He's among the best in a lot of those categories. Yes, they have some yak monsters there, of course. That does help, but still credit. He's been a very accurate quarterback for the most part this season. And rushing, San Francisco, number 3, and KC, number 19. In terms of DVOA, where these two teams match up, again, San Francisco checks a lot of boxes. Number 1 in total DVOA offensively. Pass, number 1. Rush, number 2. Kansas City, 17th in rush DVOA offense. Number 8 in pass, and total DVOA, number 8. This may not seem like it matters, but special teams, like, what it definitely matters, especially like in a winner take all. It's magnified in a Super Bowl and a playoff game. It really, these little things do matter. And the special teams, San Fran 25 and KC number 6. I mean, Harrison Butker's got a lot of success in the playoffs. He's 28 for 32 kicking field goals in the playoffs. Take that for whatever you think it's worth. How about Tommy Townsend? Like, this guy is a pin machine. He is just kicking punts and just placing them inside the 10, inside the 5. All those things matter. And what we saw last week was Lamar Jackson, the Ravens were starting a lot of their drives in the second half deep inside their end, and it certainly made a difference. How about Kansas City's defense in the second half. The last 8 games that they played, in the second half of those 8 games, they've allowed 32 points. That's 4 points per second half over the last 8. That is fantastic. And Spags has done a great job, especially against the Bills. I noticed it in the second half of adjustments. They didn't really have to do a whole lot in the second half against the Ravens, but Baltimore scored 3 points in the second half last week. Buffalo scored 7 points in the second half of the divisional matchup. Miami scored 0 in that wild card matchup. Some of the other games, like the Chargers 6, it was at the end of the season. Guys were getting rested. Cincinnati 0, no Joe Burrow. The Raiders 3. Remember that game, though? Kansas City lost that game, but not a lot happened offensively for the Raiders. New England 7, I get it. It's the Pats. Buffalo 6, another matchup to the Bills, which they lost that game, but it was not because of their defense. It was because of their offense. Right now, I haven't locked anything in. It's really hard to pick against Kansas City, but I think that San Francisco is going to win this game. I think that the Niners are going to find a way to win this game. I think you could say whatever you want about it. It's their time. I think that KC has the edge in a lot of, I think they have the edge in terms of quarterback play for sure. I do think they have the edge at the tight end, and there's no disrespect to George Kittle. Certainly San Fran has the edge on the ground. They have the edge with their receivers, right? I mean, Rashee Rice, MVS has had some moments, but Rashee Rice is great, but you got Debo and Ayuk on the other side. This is going to be a great game. It's going to be a phenomenal game. I think if Brock Purdy starts slow, it could be GG. Like, he can't afford to start slow again because of the adjustments we just talked about with Spags and the defense and Patrick Mahomes on the other side. It is really hard to count them out. The plus 2.5 is extremely tempting to take right now. We'll lock something in next week, but I am leaning with the San Francisco 49ers to pull away and win a Super Bowl here. Lou says, I'm leading a season-long betting pool I do with some friends, and he's got 26-1 odds of any of these bets. Which one would you like? Would you make to seal the win? KC +2, San Fran money line, over under 47.5. I mean, KC +2.5. I mean, is really, really hard to ignore. They've been dogs here throughout, and like it's Mahomes, right? Anyways, I want to get into some Super Bowl stuff. I just want to show you guys some things here, and we'll look at some props and we'll lock some in, and we'll give some love to Kelce and Mahomes. I don't want to talk about some dynasty stuff too, because what's happening right now in front of our eyes is, you got to respect it. It's pretty impressive. So here's the MVP odds courtesy of DraftKings. So if KC wins, it's most likely going to be Patrick Mahomes, right, at +125. You could certainly make the case for Travis Kelce at 12-1 if he has a couple touchdowns. But again, if he has a couple touchdowns, say he has 2 receiving touchdowns, Mahomes maybe has 3, maybe 4 passing touchdowns. He certainly has 2. Kelce would have to have another like 11 to 12 catch game. Rashee Rice, same sort of deal. He'd have to, pop off. This is a quarterback. Usually a quarterback wins this award. But what I wanted to say is that if you're just looking for some long shots, some sprinkles, I think it's definitely worth your time. Say CMC at +475, which I don't think is a long shot by any means. He's the first skilled player after the 2 quarterbacks with the shortest odds. He has, 4 touchdowns here in the 2 games and 2 rushing touchdowns in each one of those games. This has been just a guy who's dominated all year long. 14 rushing touchdowns in 16 games, 21 total. A lot of people, myself included, making the case for him to be the NFL MVP of the regular season. But I think, if you are looking for some long shots, I mean, why not a little sprinkle on a Debo at 20-1, a Brandon Ayuk at 60-1, a George Kittle at 60-1? These guys could certainly pop off. We know they're all yak monsters. We all know that they're difference makers as well. I think they're certainly worth little sprinkles. Just wanted to bring that to your attention because I know some people on the show are always looking for some long shot stuff here. How about the passing? We're going to roll through some of these odds here. I'm not into any of these in particular, these passing yard numbers, but I still wanted to bring them to your attention anyways. And just kind of, the lines are sharp. One thing that I will say is that everybody wants to bet overs, even just people that don't normally bet. They want to have some action, some Super Bowl party stuff. Everybody likes to bet overs here. I would lean with like an over with Mahomes and maybe an under with Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy could struggle in this game as a passer. And I think that the key here for the 49ers is to run the football with CMC. So as we move over to the rushing yards props here, I like a lot of these. You see Brock Purdy at 11.5. It's juiced at -135. I'm not totally into that one, but he did show us last week, hey, don't forget about me. If you're going to play man, I'll run. Christian McCaffrey at 88.5 is certainly one that I like. It's not my favorite one on the board, but I do have this one down here for you guys. And it's going to timestamp this one for the peeps watching the replay. Christian McCaffrey at over 89.5. So again, I'll reference the prop shop and the parlay calculator, two tools that are free over at ftmbets.com. CMC, we talked earlier about the success that he's had. He's topped this number in each of the first two playoff games. And, he did it against a Detroit team that's really good against the run. And Kansas City's not. I'm surprised that the game plan last week was what it was for Baltimore. Not a lot of rushing attempts there. We talked about the difference between these two teams defensively. And the difference really is Kansas City struggled against the run. They're 27th in rush DVOA. This is a team that's given up some big plays on the ground this season at 4.5 yards per carry, 25th in the NFL, and over 100 rushing yards allowed per game. So I do like CMC. I like that number. I suppose it could climb a little bit up to 90, 91, 92. I think that they'll lean on him. It's just there's a really good track record of Christian McCaffrey. It's just we have a massive sample size here now of when they acquired him, the touches that he gets. You go back in the last few games of the regular season, 114, 93, 145, 115, 103. This is just a guy that's hitting this number pretty consistently. He's going, arguably the best player on the field, certainly the best player on the Niners side. And when it took a little bit, I noticed with Shanahan, but when things were a little shaky through the air, they leaned on CMC, which they should in this game. So I like Christian McCaffrey. The other guy I like in this game is Isaiah Pacheco. I like Isaiah Pacheco over 65.5 rushing yards and over 16.5 rushing attempts. You see on the board the 66.5. This number is coming down. I'm not 100% sure why. I saw in our prop shop some 70s out there, and I was a little hesitant to jump on it. Now I see 67s across the board, and Bet365 is offering 65.5 at -120. The rushing attempt has stayed at 16.5. I do have both of these in the tracker, and I also have the over 87.5 rush and receiving for Pacheco. I think that this one's probably better than the rush, but the number that keeps dropping, I can't ignore it. Like at 70, I was hesitant. And then I saw 67 and I was like, I think I got to jump on that. And now this morning seeing 65.5 is just something that I really want to have a piece of. And the rushing attempt at 16.5, we've been hammering the 14.5, but 16.5 is still, I think, pretty good. We have a large sample as well as the Chiefs handing the ball off to Isaiah Pacheco and CEH not really being a big part of the game plan here. So Isaiah Pacheco has had 15 plus attempts in 12 of his last 15 games, but he has certainly topped this number quite a bit. And he's been a big time player through the air as well. And that's why I was kind of leaning a little bit on the over total at 87.5 you see here, because this was a guy that he didn't catch a lot of passes last year as a rookie. They had Jared McKinnon, he was a third down back, and he was a third down back for a big part of the season as well. But this year, 44 catches for Isaiah Pacheco. He had multiple games with 4. How he finished his regular season, 5 grabs, 3, 4, and 7. He had 4 grabs last week, only 14 receiving yards. We did have the over 16.5. I felt like we got burned. There was a catch behind the line of scrimmage. He lost like 5 or 6 on his final catch, but nonetheless, he's caught all 6 targets that he's had here in the 3 playoff games. In terms of just his rushing yards, he's got 254, which is only 4 yards per carry. He does have a touchdown in each one of the 3 games he's played here in the playoffs, but he's got 63 rushing attempts. So he has 69 total opportunities here in the 3 games. What I've said multiple times is this offense is really running through 3 players. It's Isaiah Pacheco on the ground, a couple looks through the air, 44 grabs, 49 targets this season, missed a little bit of time, right? Started off the season with a shoulder injury, wasn't really in training camp, wasn't taking hits, but was running routes with Patrick Mahomes. So that's a big jump in his game that I've noticed this year is his involvement through the air. And just the usage, right? 24 carries last week, 15 against Buffalo, 24 carries against Miami. A couple of those games, they ran the clock out, certainly. But you got to talk about what the Niners have done well this season and not so much here in the playoffs is really struggling on the ground. So I'm all in on these running backs. Excuse me. CMC over 89.5. Isaiah Pacheco at over 16.5 rushing attempts, over 65.5 rushing yards. And this one as well, I already bet it, but that rushing number continues to drop down. I think that there's value there as well. I know our guy Mike Randall is certainly on that one. Keep in mind Pacheco at a couple 100-yard games and 2 of the final 3 regular season games that he played as well. Dude runs hard, right? He just runs hard, and I thought he was a big player in the Super Bowl last year and a difference maker on why they won that game. How about let's go to some of the pass catchers. We'll start here with receptions. Again, this is from DraftKings here. If you're watching on our YouTube page, you can see it. I'll read some of these off for the iTunes and Spotify listeners. Of course, you can find these numbers in Prop Shop and your own sports book, but we're having some fun here on the show, I do believe. Brendan Ayuk at over 4.5. We got 4. A lot of these numbers, some of them are juiced. I'll say like Kyle Juszczyk just to have a catch at minus 166 is juiced. You know, he had a nice tippy toe catch last week. He didn't touch the ball at all against the Packers. And it's not something that I'm totally in on. We'll start at the top of the board. Ayuk at 4.5. CMC's at 4.5. It's juiced at minus 145. It's a high number. I'd rather the receiving yard prop for him. Deebo Samuel at 4.5 is one that I do like. This is one that I bet. The game against the Packers, he was involved very early in that football game, and then he suffered the injury and he was just away from the game. But I thought he was going to be a guy you could tell that was really going to be a big part of the game plan against the Packers. He certainly was a big part of the game plan against the Lions. He had 9 targets and 8 grabs last week. He doesn't have, like, if you're a game log Jason, he doesn't have a ton of games with over 4.5 grabs, but this is different. This is the Super Bowl. I love the matchup. They're going to find a way to get the ball in his hands. They always do. Bubble screens, quick slants. They have, of course, some end arounds and some rushing. I would say Ayuk has a better chance of topping his receiving yard prop, and Deebo has a better chance of passing his reception prop at over 4.5. There's a little bit of juice with this one, but I'm drinking it up and I like it. Kittle there at 3.5. Going to stay away from that one. It's minus 160. Pacheco's at 3.5 at plus 124. I think if you're looking for a long shot, I think that's a pretty good one. He could catch 4 passes in this game. I would not be shocked. Jennings at 1.5. Justin Watson at 1.5. MVS at 1.5. Noah Gray, Rashee Rice, and Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce here, as you see, when I remove the Deebo, is pretty juiced at minus 166. Before I got on, I noticed that this number has changed a little bit. And I dig it. I do think he's going to have 7 catches. Again, I sound like a broken record, but I think that the offense is running through 3 guys. And if Patrick Mahomes is going to throw the football 35 times in this game, Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice are going to combine for 17, 18, maybe 20 targets. Like, it's just going to happen. Travis Kelce, got him here on the board. 2 props that I like, over 6.5 catches and 69.5. I really do. I like both of these ones. The matchup is certainly tougher. We were talking DVOA a little bit earlier. One of the cool things there's a lot of cool things about DVOA, but I love like a defense versus the receiver type of game. Both teams are really good against tight ends. San Fran, number 4 in the NFL against tight ends. KC, number 10 in the NFL against tight ends. KC, number 5 in the NFL against wide receiver 1. San Fran, 11. San Fran, number 3 against wide receiver 2s. Kansas City, 25. Not great, but they are number 2 against wide receiver 3s. And San Fran, number 10 against wide receiver 3s. How about defending parts of the field? On the left side of the field, both of these teams top 10. No real difference in terms of edges. San Fran 9, KC 10. Middle of the field, number 1 team at defending the middle of the field. It's San Fran, number 1, KC 10. Right side of the field, KC top 5. Deep, KC top 5. Edges there for both of them. They don't give up a lot of deep shots. Not at all. Neither team really does. And San Fran much better at defending the short part of the field, which doesn't really benefit a guy like Travis Kelce. The yardage, maybe he doesn't get there. But the catches, I certainly think what we saw last week, what we've seen in the playoffs from Travis Kelce, not just this year, over the whole course of his career, like come on, this guy just shows up in big moments. Is that simple? It really is that simple for me. And I am leaning with Travis Kelce, the over 6.5 and 69 here. And that's really it. Rashee Rice, I have down here at 6.5. This number was juice as well. This is one that I think I'm willing to wait just a little bit and see if it does come down just a touch, because as I mentioned, these numbers are all super sharp. Everybody wants to bet overs. They're all very, very high numbers. I am seeing a little bit of line movement, like minus 106 for Rashee Rice to have 7 grabs. That's over at Caesars. I would lean with that. What I saw earlier in the week was like minus 145, and it's just not something I'm totally in on. I do have a couple same game parlays that I think we can have some adjustments on the alternate line, and I think we can. I got a good 7-1 same game that I like. Let's go over to receiving yards here as we wrap up. And we'll do the one and done lineup, and I am going to wrap up with some Travis Kelce and Mahomes love. So proceed with caution. The two hatest guys in the world right now, I am going to give them the love that I think that they deserve, and I just respect greatness. Like, I never hated what Tom Brady in New England was doing. I was kind of sick of them, and I was bummed that they beat the Eagles in 04, and I just whatever. You just respect it. You want to see somebody new, of course. I was rooting for Detroit. I wanted to see them in the Super Bowl, but it is what it is, and this should be a really good game. The receiving yard props. I don't see a ton of edges in any of these. And you're probably going to laugh at me at the one that I like the most. The one that I like the most is MVS. Yeah, that's right. I did give Travis Kelce. I have the slight lean to Christian McCaffrey at 35.5, right? This guy is just a player through the air. We know that. And he had 1 or 2 catches, the stiff arm that he showed last week, and he could just rack up those yards on a couple of grabs. MVS at 18.5 receiving yards is something that I like, believe it or not. I don't know what it is. The guy dropped all the passes in the regular season, but he's shown up here in the playoffs, especially in the last 2 games. He has 100 receiving yards in the last 2 games. He had 38 grabs on 2 catches for Baltimore. Against Baltimore, he iced that game, a deep shot there that Mahomes gave him. He had 62 receiving yards on 2 catches against the Buffalo Bills. We know that he is a deep threat guy. We know that most of his targets. My goodness. We know that most of his targets are going to be deep. They're going to be through the air. That's what's going to happen with MVS. That's part of the drops. You look at some of the big ADOT players in the NFL, and Gabe Davis and George Pickens, like, they have high ADOT, average depth of target. Those balls are definitely harder to reel in, but Mahomes puts it on them most of the time. We've seen some really bad drops from MVS, but I'm just thinking with all the attention like that Rice is going to get and Travis Kelce is going to get, there's going to be a deep shot or 2 here with MVS, and we know that he can do this on 1 grab. You may sweat it out. It may not come until the final drive, just like it came last week against Baltimore. That's certainly possible. But I'm drinking it. I'm in. That's where I'm at. Tyler, what up, Means? How are we feeling about the Chiefs back in the Super Bowl? I'm sick of it. There we go. Like, everyone's sick of it. And I get it. I totally get it. I'm not. It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me. I got a lot of respect for what's happening here. And since you brought that up, and this is something I wanted to do. We'll do one and done here in about 5 minutes, and then we'll get out of here. Let's really just dive into what Patrick Mahomes has done, and I want to kind of compare him, because this is what we do, right? We have 2 weeks to kind of prepare for this game. We talked with some storylines. We just talked through some props. Let's talk about Mahomes here for a second and just really give him some love and what he is doing here so far. So, I mean, he's definitely special, and he's on his way to becoming one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He's already a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's a lock. No matter what happens next weekend in Las Vegas, no matter what happens the rest of his career, I do believe that he is already a first ballot Hall of Famer. We know about the 6 AFC championship games in 6 years as a starter. That's impressive. How about the third quarterback to start 4 Super Bowls in a 5-year span? The first quarterback ever to start 4 Super Bowls before turning 30. He's 28. Only Tom Brady and John Elway have more Super Bowl starts than Patrick Mahomes. His 14 playoff wins only behind Brady and Joe Montana. In 17 games, he has 44 touchdowns, 4,800 yards, a 67% completion rate. He's 14-3. His two of the 3 losses to Tom Brady. 12-1 against everybody else. Speaking of Tom Brady, how does he stack up against the GOAT that we all know is Tom Brady? And I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT right now. It's a fun debate. You can get into it. LeBron, Jordan, you can get into all that stuff. Brady's still the GOAT. But how do these two stack up? How is Mahomes trending up? Like, what's the trajectory here of Mahomes? And let's compare the two. Through age 28, Mahomes, 16 more regular season wins. Mahomes, 4 more playoff wins. 4 AFC titles for Mahomes, 1 more than Tom. 4 Super Bowl appearances for Mahomes, 1 more than Tom. Tom did win all 3 of those appearances, so he has 1 more Super Bowl than Mahomes. Of course, Mahomes could tie him with a victory in Las Vegas against the 49ers in Super Bowl 58. They each have 2 Super Bowl MVPs, but Mahomes 2 regular season NFL MVPs to Brady's 0. 2,800 passing yards versus 2,100 passing yards. Mahomes, so that's 1,000, by the way. Mahomes also 72 more passing touchdowns than Tom Brady. So Mahomes has him in a lot of these categories. And if he can get his 3rd Super Bowl at age 28, he's going to be 4 back with, I don't know if he's going to play till 44, 45. But with Andy Reid, and assuming Andy Reid doesn't sail off into the sunset, the 2nd most playoff wins of all time, could have another Super Bowl on his resume as well here. These two could be back again. But I just thought it was very interesting. I know that the comparisons have been out there. A lot of people are doing this stuff, but myself just looking into some of the numbers here, like the regular season stuff, I think you could take with a grain of salt. Many more wins and passing touchdowns and passing yards, but the playoff stuff is real. Like, this stuff is legit. And the 4 AFC titles for Mahomes, 1 more than Tom. The 4 Super Bowl appearances, 1 more than Tom. Brady has that 1 more Super Bowl win, but these guys could be all tied and locked up through age 28, both of them. The first 6 years, basically, as a starter. As for the Dynasty talk, they deserve to be in the conversation. The Chiefs are 1 win away from the greatest 5-year run of all time. Of all time. You want to compare the 2014 to 2018 New England Patriots with this version of New England, or this version of KC, rather? It's very similar. 5 division titles for New England from 2014 to 2018. 5 conference championship appearances. 4 Super Bowl appearances. 3 Super Bowl wins. 12-2 record in the playoffs. 74-20 record overall. How about KC here? Assuming they win, they would also have 3 Super Bowl wins. They have 4 Super Bowl appearances. They have 5 division titles. They have 5 conference championship appearances. They have a 14-2 record, 2 more wins than the Pats. They have a 77-22 record overall, 3 more wins than the Pats. Those numbers are oddly very similar over a same, 5-year sample size. And there's some love to some other teams, certainly, that we should give some love to. How long can a dynasty be? Can a dynasty be from 2001 to 2018? New England won 6 Super Bowls over that span. Is that, that's a 17-year span. Is that a dynasty? How about the Steelers? The Steelers won 4 Super Bowls from 1972 to 1979. I think that is certainly a dynasty. 4 Super Bowls over a 7-8 year span. How about San Francisco? Again, 81 to 94. The years are kind of spread out there, roughly 15, but 5 Super Bowl wins for the Niners over that run. The Cowboys, 3 Super Bowls from 92 to 95. I think that's a dynasty. I think 3 is certainly a dynasty. And then the Chiefs here looking to match that with 3 Super Bowl wins over a 5-year span. And considering the 17-year span from New England and KC have about, if you want to say that that's dynasty, 17-year span, KC will have about 12 years to grab 3 more to match that 6. And as long as they have Mahomes, absolutely anything is possible. I'm going to give some love to Kelce on the way out here. But at first, this is what I'm rolling with for one and done. We'll take your questions if you have any in strategy pieces here. So appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. You dealt with the non-audio issues to start the show, which was fun. Bats. So a couple of these players, we had to sweat it out. I was kicking myself, midway through that Lions game last week thinking, oh my goodness, I am just not going to have anybody in the Super Bowl because I used up all the Detroit players. But we saved Christian McCaffrey for this moment. We saved Deebo Samuel for this moment. Pivoted it off Travis Kelce, talked about it in the comments section. So if I steered you guys wrong with the Travis Kelce call last week, my bad. He did have a good game, so that's great. I was just thinking, the more I was thinking about it last week, I just made a kind of a last minute change a couple days before the game started. Originally had Travis Kelce in my lineup with Sam Laporta, and I was like, oh my goodness, if KC wins and Detroit wins, I won't have a tight end. So I had to go with Kittle and Sam Laporta. I was happy to have Sam Laporta. I'm glad it didn't come off of him because he had a really good game. So I just wanted to use Kittle and Laporta in what I thought would be a higher scoring game, which it certainly was. Last week we were on the under and KC to cover, and not a lot happened in that game, just the 17 points. So we didn't get to use Kelce in the big games that he had, but we have him now here in the Super Bowl, and we didn't have Mark Andrews. We didn't use Mark Andrews. So a little bit of a pivot there. And that's something that we talked about at length with the strategy. You just can't put yourself in a situation where you won't have anybody this week. I'm in fourth in the SiriusXM pool. I'm 17 points behind. I see some people ahead that can't use CMC. They don't have Pacheco available to them. They do have Mahomes. Looks like most people in that particular league near the top will have Patrick Mahomes available to them. They used Brock Purdy last week, and that was the game plan for us as well. Don't have Travis Kelce. We'll have to roll out a Noah Gray. So hopefully you have some of these options available to you. I'm going to read this off for the iTunes and Spotify listeners. It's Patrick Mahomes at the quarterback position, Christian McCaffrey at the running back position, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is my RB2. It's not ideal. I am going with him over Kyle Juszczyk. Last week we saw Juice have a couple really nice plays. He actually had a touchdown in the Super Bowl 4 years ago when these two teams played each other. CEH, I'm not expecting a whole lot from him. My thinking here is just to kind of maximize my upside. He has been a player through the air at times, catch a pass or two, maybe a red zone pass from Mahomes to CEH. Maybe he finds the end zone, double my points. It's kind of when I think I'm maximizing my upside here. Deebo Samuel is my wide receiver 1, MVS. We talked about him over 100 yards over the past 2 games. He's been catching some passes. He's the big play guy here. I was back and forth a little bit between him and Mecole Hardman. Hardman's had a couple end arounds. He doesn't play as much as MVS. MVS is on the field quite a bit. And I just can't play Mecole Hardman. I just don't think he's going to get I don't think either of these guys are going to get a ton of looks, a ton of targets. But this could be the difference of winning and not winning, like nailing the MVS versus Mecole Hardman, or Justin Watson versus, I don't know, Richie James, or Juwan Jennings is in here because they do have a lot of 3 wide receiver sets in San Fran. He's had a couple moments, a couple nice catches. We have seen him have an uptick when somebody gets hurt, whether it's Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. Of course, we can't use Rashee Rice. We can't use Brendan Ayuk. We can't use Isaiah Pacheco. We can't use George Kittle. These are guys that I definitely try to find a way to get in the lineup. You put them in. If you can use them, you put them in. But we have Juwan Jennings here, and we have Justin Watson. Justin Watson, I had some moments earlier in the season. He definitely part of the drops and part of the problem in Kansas City in the regular season with a lot of the drops that he had. But he did have some red zone looks. I mean, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce are the big players inside the red zone. Again, not expecting a whole lot here from Justin Watson. He does have 3 catches for 36 yards. He had 20 yards against Miami. He had 16. He's got 5 targets in the 3 games. There's some decent moments in the regular season, in particular, to start the NFL campaign for the Chiefs. 45 yards, 62 yards, 51 yards. Those were his first 3 games. He actually topped 40 receiving yards in 5 of his first 7 games. He had another one against the Eagles with 53. He had that game in particular, 11 targets and 5 grabs, really attacked them in the middle of the field. He only had 3 touchdowns on the season, but 3 of them came in the second half of the regular season. They actually came in the final 7 games of the regular season for Justin Watson. And then we're rolling with the Niners. You can't see there, but it's the Niners defense, and it is the kicker's not on here, but we're rolling with this the Niners kicker as well. If I were to choose, if I had the choice between the two, I mean, obviously I don't want to play the Niners against Mahomes, but that's what we had to use KC, and we were just going to use whatever team advanced in the Super Bowl on the NFC side. I think that I would much rather use the veteran and Butker, and I would much rather use the Niner or the Chiefs defense, because I feel like, again, we talked about sacks, the edge in terms of sacks, the secondary, and Brock Purdy. Let's be honest, Brock Purdy. The last two games, the fourth quarter for Brock Purdy's been fantastic, top notch. Doesn't get much better, but he's been pretty brutal in the first part of each of those two games. So he can't start slow, but I think that the defense, if you could choose either side, it would be the Chiefs. Maybe they can get after him a couple sacks, maybe turn a couple of those throws into interceptions as well. So let's dive into some of the questions here that I'm sure we have some one and done stuff here. Okay, so yeah, Steven, just can't bet against Mahomes. They find a way. I can see the KC defense messing with Purdy. Absolutely agree. My gut says San Fran is going to get this, but my heart, my head says the same things you're saying. Is KC's defense, is Spags, the adjustments, and Patrick Mahomes, and then Brock Purdy just looking pretty average in these two playoff games. Like, he's had good fourth quarters, but you can't look average for three quarters of a game and get away with it every time. I don't know, man. One and done. Kyle Woods, Mahomes, CMC, CEH, Debo, MVS, Kittle, Jusic, Baltimore losing, hurt my plan, but JMO got there with the striking distance, but can't win, but can finish in the money. So I think that's, you're probably running out of options, right? I think the biggest thing is the MVS. I think if you're shooting for upside, MVS, right? We talked about the ADOT, the big plays that he's getting from Mahomes. Juwan Jennings or Justin Watson, if you could play only one. I'm in second place. My opponent can't play CMC, Debo, or Kelce. I love that. I know my opponent doesn't have Kelce or a Debo either, so I'm hoping to gain some. Who's your quarterback? I think, honestly, it may just come down to that. I know that you're just trying to play it safe. I think the safe play is Juwan Jennings. He's going to probably play more snaps, run more routes, maybe get more targets. I think maybe is slightly a better opportunity for Watson to score a touchdown. I think if you had, Brock Purdy, I'd probably just lean with Jennings. Mahomes is your quarterback this week. Okay. I still think I would lean with Jennings because you're trying to play it safe. You're in second place and your opponent can't play those studs. I think you just maybe play it safe with Juwan Jennings. He's a guy that's been going to be on the field a little bit more, and you roll with that. I think if you were looking for a big come from behind win and gain some points, you'd go with Watson, and you hope that Mahomes, finds Watson in the end zone, scores a touchdown, and away you go. And you know the answer to this. We don't consider Tony if he's active, although he did have a big Super Bowl game. He just has good games against the Eagles, I think. But he did have a big Super Bowl game last week. They were doing you a favor last week, Tony, by saying you were hurt and had some personal issues. He took to Instagram and said he wasn't hurt. They're doing you a favor, dude, because I just don't think you're that great. Who am I to say? But let's be honest. You haven't had a great year. You've been hurt a lot too, and you struggled with the fundamentals of the game of football. Kyle Woods could also flex Juwan or Watson over Juice. Yeah, I would rather go with the wide receivers than Juice, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a whole lot of CMC. I don't think he can bank on what we saw last week. Again, he didn't touch the ball against Green Bay. So I would lean with, I think your quarterback is Mahomes. I maybe just shoot the upside. You said you're within striking distance. I think you want to shoot for the ceiling and hope that he hits up with Watson for a touchdown. So that's what I'm rolling with. Not going to make any changes. I think the only thing that I could really do is get Mecole Hardman in there. I was back and forth a little bit there with Jennings, Watson, and Mecole as the three guys. Juice was in the conversation in my head, but that's what I'm going with here. Mahomes, McCaffrey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Debo, MVS, Juwan Jennings, Travis Kelce, Justin Watson, and the 49ers special teams, defense, and kicker. Again, here, I'm going to do a little Kelce thing on the way out, but just to kind of recap where I'm at for props, and we'll revisit this next week. We'll have some new faces on Mean Streets as well, but this is where I'm at. Pacheco, over rushing yards at 65.5, over 60 or 16.5 rushing attempts. I got Pacheco here at over 87.5 total. That's one that I already bet, but the rushing number came down, and I just think that there's a massive edge at the over 65.5, considering what we've seen from opposing teams of Aaron Jones and Montgomery, and even the Lions nearly 200 rushing yards last week against the Niners. And Pacheco running hard, man, running real hard. Love the way that he runs. Kelce, 6.5 catches and over 69.5 receiving yards. I do like the catch prop a little bit more than the receiving yards. CMC over 89.5 rushing yards. I am in on MVS over 18.5 receiving yards, and I like Deebo Samuel here at over 4.5 receiving yards. I actually had a couple. I was going to save this for next week, but since some people are here, kind of wrap up with this. Kelce, 5+ grabs, 50+ receiving yards. Rashee Rice, 5+ grabs, 50+ receiving yards. Deebo Samuel, 4+ receptions. Pacheco, 50+ rushing. CMC, 75+ rushing. That pays 6-1. That's 6-1. It's basically just Kelce, Rice, 5+ grabs each, and 50+ receiving yards. Samuel, 4+, and CMC, 75+ rushing yards. It's at Bet365, and it's 6-1. A 3-leg touchdown, same game. Of course, it's going to be only one game. CMC, Kelce, Pacheco, 4-1. A longer shot one. I put a little bit of a sprinkle on this one. Debo, Rice, Ayuk, and Mahomes. That one's at 80-1. Some long shot touchdowns. I don't know if we put them up here or not. Maybe we'll have to save that. We'll have to save it for next week. I thought we had some touchdown stuff here, but the long shot ones like MVS at 5-1. Again, I don't know, something about MVS. Maybe it's just because he's in my one and done lineup. I'm just like, man, I can't be going all in on MVS. I'm gonna lose a lot of money this weekend, next weekend, if that's the case. But MVS at 5-1, Watson at +650, Juice at 12-1, Jennings at +650, and I think Mahomes at 4-1 as well. He had a rushing. I think he had a score, I do believe, against the Niners in the Super Bowl, but we know that, he's got that rushing ability. He can call his own number and things like that. So I think that's a pretty decent long shot. As for Travis Kelce, so haters are going to have to leave for a little bit, because I'm going to give a little bit of love to Travis Kelce here. I got to give some love to him. And I want to know from you guys where he would rank among the best tight ends of all time. Travis Kelce, where does he rank currently among the best tight ends of all time? Where do you think he'll finish among the best tight ends of all time? And we're going to talk about him being potentially the best playoff performer that we've ever seen from a non-quarterback. I know. Bear with me. Travis Kelce's 11,000 receiving yards rank 4th of all time among tight ends, behind Antonio Gates, Jason Witten, and Tony Gonzalez, who leads with just over 15,000 receiving yards. Travis Kelce's 907 catches also rank 4th, behind the same 4. He's 48 back of Antonio Gates for 3rd. I don't believe he's going to be able to catch Tony G, who leads the way with over 1,300 receptions among tight ends. How about touchdowns? Kelce, 74, tied for the 5th most. Witten, Gates, Tony, Gronk, Jimmy G. He's 18 back of Gronk, which I think is possible if he plays another 3 years. Another statistic that players like Gonzalez and Witten and Gates have over Kelce is games played. Witten, 271. Tony G, 270. Gates, 236. Travis Kelce's only played 159 games. He's averaged 71 receiving yards per game compared to Tony G at 56. Longevity is key. Tony G's been healthy. He played deep into his career. He was a beast. 100 fewer games, though, from Travis Kelce when it compares to him and Tony and Witten. At age 36, we did see Kelce's streak of 1,000 yards consecutive seasons at 1K snapped at 7. He was 16 away this year. He could have gotten it if he wanted to play in the final game. The playoffs are certainly more important, and we're seeing an elevated Travis Kelce here in the playoffs. His 5 touchdowns were the 2nd lowest mark of his career, 4 in 2016. His 10.6 yards per catch this season, a career low. Never had a season under 12. 12.5 for his career. 90 catches for 6 consecutive seasons, but only 65 yards per game. So his numbers really did drop off this season. Maybe towards the end of his career, we're really starting to see it. So he would need to average 92 receiving yards over the next 3 years just to flirt with Tony G's receiving yard record. Most likely not going to happen. He's probably not going to finish as the best regular season tight end of all time or the best tight end of all time. Certainly his regular season numbers are not going to match up with Tony G, but he's a lock, I believe, to finish as the best tight end of all time in the playoffs. Last week in the AFC Championship game, he passed Jerry Rice for the most catches in the playoffs. 156 catches in 21 games compared to 151 catches in 29 games for Jerry Rice. Kelce just 400 receiving yards away from passing Rice's record of 2,200 receiving yards in the playoffs. And he's only 3 touchdowns away from matching Rice's 22 as well. May not get it done in the Super Bowl. I don't think he's going to have 3 catches or 3 touchdowns and 400 receiving yards. But if he plays another year or two, he could certainly get to this. How about his overall playoff stats? These numbers are spectacular. 156 catches, 1,800 yards, 19 touchdowns in 21 games. In 17 games with Patrick Mahomes, basically a full season in the regular season, Kelce, 133 grabs, 1,500 yards, and 18 touchdowns. In 17 playoff games with Mahomes, he has 1,500 yards, 133 grabs, and 18 touchdowns. His last 12 playoff games, absolutely epic. He's averaging 8.6 catches, 98.1 receiving yards, and 13 touchdowns, 70-plus receiving yards in 12 straight playoff games. Yes, that's why we're taking over 69.5. This guy just shows up. He's one of the best tight ends of all time and one of the best playoff performers of all time. And I don't think that there's any doubt in that. Let me know what you guys think. Where does he match up among the greats all time at the tight end position? Do you think he's going to catch some of these guys ahead of him? Do you think that he is going to go down as one of the best playoff performers? And how many more years do you think he'll play with Mahomes? And if we can see these guys again, I know that people are sick of it, but if we could see these guys again in the playoffs over the next couple of years, he may just own every playoff record ahead of Jerry Rice, who of course is one of the goats as well. Absolutely good stuff there. Kyle says, if we were talking about Kelce along with Jerry Rice, I think this says a ton about him as an NFL player, let alone a tight end. And he's dating the MVP. It had to come up. Taylor Swift had to come up. All right, guys, we're going to bounce for now. Sorry about the mishaps at the start of the show. We certainly had some technical difficulties there. Not just the bats that we started with here on a Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll be back next week. We're going to have a lot of shows. We're going to dive into some more stuff. We'll talk some props, some novelty stuff, some touchdowns. We'll talk cross sport. We'll have some fun. You can do cross sport props. And we'll do I think I saw Pacheco plus 25 in terms of rushing yards versus CMC. We'll dive in. We'll try to find some edges, and we'll have some outside people jumping in and giving us some different fresh takes as well. Appreciate you, Steven. Appreciate all you guys taking the time to hang out with me all year. It's been a really fun ride. Again, next week as well, we will dive into free agency and the draft, dynasty buys, all those things here on Mean Street. Smash the like button, tell a friend, subscribe, rate, review. Any questions, hit me up. But again, we will be here next week. We'll have several shows leading up to Super Bowl 58. Have a good one, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.